Think for a second, just about the sheer volume of video and audio you consume in a typical week.
Oh, it's massive.
Right. I mean, consider the hours you spend with a podcast running in the background during your commute.
Yeah, or those recorded lectures you watch at double speed.
Exactly. Or, coding tutorials, language apps you actively study. We are living in this era where high-fidelity information is just instantly available on demand.
Anywhere, anytime.
Right, and the delivery systems are incredibly sophisticated. We rely on gigabit internet, AI upscaling, noise-canceling algorithms.
Stuff that makes an amateur YouTube video sound like it was mastered in a multi-million-dollar studio.
Yes, but here's the crazy part. When you actually need to interact with that dense information.
Like when you need to pause it to take a note.
Right, or process a complex thought or repeat a foreign phrase. Our primary interface is, it's primitive.
It really is.
You are sitting there manually striking the spacebar on a keyboard. It is a strangely archaic physical action for such a futuristic digital environment.
Well, the disparity between the sophistication of the media and the crudeness of the control mechanism is just striking.
It's totally mismatched.
Right, because we have access to this continuous, high-pressure flow of data, but the only tool we have to regulate it is a blunt binary switch.
Play or pause.
Exactly. Play or pause. You are either receiving the full force of the information, or you are sitting in absolute silence.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here before we go any further.
Sure, go for it.
Hitting the spacebar might be binary, but it requires intent,
Fair point.
When you manually stop a video to take a note, you are actively engaging with the material. You are deciding that a specific moment is important enough to halt the flow.
Right.
So if we start automating that, don't we risk turning the user into, a passive receptacle? I wonder if the physical act of striking a key actually anchors your attention.
I mean, that assumes the physical act of pausing doesn't carry a cognitive cost.
Wait, a cognitive cost?
Yeah. In a casual listening scenario, your point totally holds up. But consider a scenario of intensive learning.
Like transcribing a dense lecture.
Exactly. Or repeating a complex sentence in a new language. Human working memory is severely limited.
Right. We can only hold so much in our heads at once.
Exactly. So when your brain is dedicating maximum resources to decoding a difficult piece of audio, forcing it to simultaneously monitor the audio, decide when to stop, plan a motor action, and physically strike the spacebar.
Oh, wow. I see what you mean.
Right. It creates a cognitive bottleneck. You are bleeding mental energy on the mechanics of the interface rather than the substance of the material.
So the goal isn't just convenience then, it's actually preserving cognitive bandwidth.
Precisely.
Well, that brings us to our focus today. For this deep dive, we are going to analyze the user interface of a Google Chrome extension called Universal Autoplay and Pause.
Specifically, we are looking at version 1.0.0.
Right, and our entire source material for this analysis consists of 5 screenshots of the extension's UI.
Just the screenshots.
Yep. We are going to decode the visual design, the typography, and the highly specific numerical values chosen by the developers.
Which are fascinating, by the way.
They really are. The objective is to understand how this tool attempts to solve that cognitive bottleneck we just discussed.
Analyzing a piece of software purely through its interface screenshots requires us to look at what the developers prioritized.
Because the visual hierarchy of a menu tells you exactly what the tool values most.
Exactly. So if you look at the very top of the interface, directly under the title, there's a straightforward mission statement.
Oh, yeah. It says control play and pause for audio and video.
Right. And directly beneath that statement is a section prominently labeled timing.
In all caps, too.
Yep. This is the core engine of the extension. Notice it doesn't offer a single slider for speed or just a basic on and off switch.
No, it presents 2 distinct, separate numerical inputs.
Right. The first is play duration, and the second is gap duration.
And the screenshots show these inputs aren't just, basic drop-down menus with broad options.
They're highly specific.
Yeah, they are text boxes with micro adjustment arrows, like up and down toggles.
And they feature a lowercase is to indicate seconds.
Right. So in one of the main views, it shows the play duration set to 5.0 seconds and the gap duration set to 2.0 seconds.
But then another screenshot showing a different configuration has the play duration at 3.0 seconds and the gap duration at 1.5 seconds.
See, it's the inclusion of that decimal point that really catches my attention.
Why is that?
Well, they are allowing users to adjust their media consumption down to the 10th of a second. That's incredibly precise.
It is. And decoupling the play state from the pause state and allowing tenth of a second adjustments represents a fundamental shift in user control.
Because it automates the rhythm of consumption.
Exactly. The play duration defines the intake. It determines the size of the information chunk you are allowing your brain to process at one time.
Okay.
And then the gap duration provides the mandatory cognitive space to act on that information.
So by allowing the user to manipulate both variables independently, the extension is functioning as like a personalized cognitive metronome.
A metronome is the perfect way to picture it.
Right, because instead of the chaotic start and stop rhythm of manually hunting for the spacebar, you have this relentless, mathematically perfect pulse.
5 seconds of audio, 2 seconds of silence.
5 seconds of audio, 2 seconds of silence. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, exactly.
But I am still hung up on the decimals.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, who actually notices the difference between a 1 second pause and a 1.5 second pause? It seems like an unnecessary level of engineering for a simple web extension.
Well, in the context of repetitive cognitive tasks, a half second is actually an eternity.
An eternity, come on.
No, seriously. Take the 3.0 second play and 1.5 second gap configuration shown in that second screenshot.
Okay, looking at it now.
3 seconds is roughly the time it takes a native speaker to articulate a moderately complex sentence.
Okay, sure.
So if you're using this tool for language learning, your task is to hear that sentence and repeat it perfectly during the gap.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. A 1 second gap might force you to rush your pronunciation, causing anxiety and breaking your concentration.
Because you're tripping over your own words trying to beat the clock.
Exactly. But a 2 second gap might leave you lingering in silence, allowing the acoustic memory of the native speaker's cadence to degrade before the next sentence begins.
Oh, wow. So if the gap is too short, you stumble. But if it's too long, you lose the flow state.
Right. The ability to dial it in to precisely 1.5 seconds means you can tune the media exactly to the speed of your own articulatory loop.
Your articulatory loop, what's that?
It's the part of your working memory that rehearses verbal information, like your brain's internal scratch pad for sound.
Okay, that is fascinating. So the interface basically empowers you to find the exact threshold where you are challenged but not overwhelmed.
Yes. The developers clearly understood that processing speed varies wildly depending on the user's proficiency, the density of the material, and the specific task at hand.
That makes total sense. So we have established the mechanics of this timing engine. But a sophisticated engine is useless if the user can't access it easily while navigating the web.
Right, the workflow has to be smooth.
Exactly. Which brings us to the control section of the interface, which sits directly below that timing module.
And again, the developers didn't just rely on a single toggle switch here.
No, they built two entirely different methods for engaging the extension.
Which is pretty rare for a simple tool.
Yeah. On the left side of this section, there's an option labeled Autoplay and Pause, which utilizes keyboard shortcuts.
The screenshot displays Ctrl plus Shift plus P for Windows users.
And Cmd plus Shift plus P for Mac users.
Right.
But then on the right side, there's an option called Floating Button, accompanied by the text Show Control on the page.
And the visual execution of that floating button is detailed in a separate screenshot entirely.
Right. Let's look at that one. It is a highly distinct UI element.
It definitely stands out.
It features a bright blue circle containing a lighter blue play icon, and the outer edge of the blue circle is stylized to look like a strip of film.
Yeah, that's a nice touch.
But then, attached to the bottom left of this primary button is a much smaller, dark gray circle containing a crisp white X.
Yep, that tiny X is crucial.
Well, I am going to push back hard on this specific design choice.
Oh, why is that?
Because floating UI elements are almost universally despised by users.
I mean, you're not wrong there.
Right. They are notorious for covering up subtitles, blocking crucial parts of a video, or just generally cluttering the screen.
Yeah, nobody likes pop-ups.
So when you are trying to focus on a piece of educational content, the last thing you want is a bright blue circle hovering over the media. Why would a developer include a feature that is so fundamentally disruptive to the visual experience?
Well, your reaction is super common, and honestly, it stems from years of poorly implemented web design.
Like those intrusive chat widgets.
Exactly. Intrusive chat widgets, sticky video players that refuse to close, you name it.
Ugh, the worst.
But the design of the specific button acknowledges that exact frustration.
How so?
The critical element is that smaller, dark circle with the white X.
I mean, it's just a close button.
It is a permanently exposed, instantly accessible dismissal mechanism.
Oh, I see.
The developers didn't hide the close function behind a right-click menu or force you to navigate all the way back to the extension panel to disable it.
Right, because that takes you out of your workflow.
Exactly. By placing a highly visible X directly alongside the primary toggle, they are signaling to the user that they understand screen real estate is valuable.
Ah, so the floating button is designed to be banished the millisecond becomes an annoyance.
Yes, it's there when you need it and effortlessly gone when you don't.
Okay, that makes the inclusion of the floating button slightly more defensible.
Just slightly.
Well, it still begs the question of why they built two separate control architectures. Why not just stick to the keyboard shortcuts?
You mean the Ctrl Shift P?
Yeah, Ctrl Shift P is clean, it's invisible, and it doesn't interfere with the video player at all.
Well, it's because the two control methods serve entirely different physical postures and learning personas.
Physical postures? What do you mean?
Think about it. Keyboard shortcuts are designed for power users and touch typists.
Okay.
Picture a student taking dense notes in a word processor while listening to a lecture. Their hands are anchored to the keyboard.
Right, they're typing away.
So if they need to temporarily disable the auto-pause function to let a long segment of the lecture play out, moving their hand to the mouse, locating a button on the screen, and clicking it introduces massive physical friction.
It totally breaks their ergonomic flow.
Exactly. A keyboard shortcut allows them to toggle the engine without ever lifting their fingers from the home row.
Okay, that covers the typist. But I guess if you aren't actively typing, the math changes.
Exactly. If you are leaning back in your chair, simply watching a documentary and absorbing the visual information, your hand is likely resting on the mouse, not the keyboard.
Right, in a lean-back posture, remembering and executing a three-key combination.
Ctrl, Shift, and P.
Yeah, that actually becomes the friction point.
Exactly. So a large, bright, mouse-driven toggle directly on the screen is significantly more intuitive in that scenario.
That makes a lot of sense. The developers didn't force a single interaction model on the user. They actually accommodated the physical reality of how people consume media in different contexts.
Which is just great design. The interface adapts to the user's workflow, rather than demanding the user adapt to the software.
So true. Okay, so we have covered the mathematics of the timing and the physical ergonomics of the controls.
Now for the fun part.
Right. Now we need to look at what this extension actually sounds like when it is running.
The acoustic experience.
Because honestly, the idea of a video starting and stopping every 5 seconds sounds like an auditory nightmare.
It does sound pretty choppy in theory.
Yeah, the abrupt cuts would be incredibly grating. Which leads us to the section of the interface labeled Pro Features.
Ah, yes, the Pro tier.
Right. There is a block here titled Soft Gap, situated next to a yellow icon containing a pause symbol.
And the text underneath Soft Gap provides the crucial detail here. It says, fade down instead of abrupt silence.
Oh, nice.
It is also worth noting the prominent Pro version button at the bottom of the interface, which indicates that this specific acoustic feature requires a paid upgrade.
So it's a premium feature. Well, I want to focus on why fading down is so vital that it justifies being behind a paywall.
It's a huge deal psychologically speaking.
Well, to put it in perspective for you listening, imagine you are at a venue listening to music at a high volume and someone accidentally yanks the power cord out of the amplifier.
Oh, that's the worst.
The instantaneous drop from loud audio to dead silence is physically jarring.
It really makes you wince.
Contrast that with a professional DJ who needs to transition between tracks or speak to the audience.
They don't just cut the power.
No, they gently pull the fader down, lowering the volume smoothly over a second or two. The soft gap is basically performing the role of that DJ.
The DJ analogy is perfectly suited to explain the underlying neuroscience here, actually.
Wait, neuroscience.
Oh, yeah. Our auditory systems are evolutionarily wired to monitor our environment for sudden, dramatic changes.
Like a predator snapping a twig.
Exactly. A sharp, unexpected noise, or conversely, a sudden and absolute silence, is interpreted by the brain as a potential anomaly or threat.
Huh.
So when audio is cut abruptly, it triggers an involuntary orienting reflex.
You were saying the brain perceives the sudden pause as an error?
Yes. Your attention is immediately hijacked. The sudden lack of sensory input causes a momentary spike in cognitive arousal.
Even if you know it's coming.
Even if you know it's coming.
Yeah.
Because it's a reflex. Even if it only registers as a microstressor, consider the cumulative effect.
Oh man, if the timing module is set to a 5-second play duration.
You're experiencing that abrupt, jarring cut 12 times a minute.
12 times a minute. Those microstressors would totally compound, constantly jolting you out of your concentration.
You are constantly being startled by the tool that is supposed to be helping you focus.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. But by implementing the soft gap, the software bypasses that orienting reflex entirely.
Because it's smooth.
Right. The smooth fade down provides a subconscious acoustic cue. It gently signals to the auditory processing centers that the sound isn't broken or interrupted.
It's just a natural pause beginning.
Exactly. It smooths the transition between intake and processing, allowing the user to maintain a state of deep cognitive flow.
So the developers recognize that acoustic harshness would ultimately fatigue the user and cause them to abandon the tool.
Precisely. They engineered around human biology.
That frames the soft gap, not just as a luxury feature, but as a structural necessity for long-term use.
Absolutely. It is a piece of acoustic engineering designed to manage the user's stress levels.
Amazing. Well, this brings us to the final and honestly most revealing piece of evidence in these screenshots.
The presets menu.
Yes, the presets menu. This section connects all the abstract mechanics of timing and acoustics we've been talking about to concrete human behavior.
It's where the rubber meets the road.
Right. The main UI states, save and switch play and pause with one click.
And a separate screenshot details the expanded presets menu, which is divided into two sections, built-in options and custom your presets.
The built-in presets offer a fascinating taxonomy of cognitive tasks.
They really do. Let's dig into the numbers.
Okay, let's read through the exact progression and their specific timing ratios.
Sounds good.
The list begins with a group of presets dedicated to shadowing. We have shadowing short sentences set to a 3.0 second play and a 1.5 second gap.
Okay.
Then shadowing standard is set to a 5.0 second play and a 2.0 second gap.
Right.
Shadowing extended shifts to an 8.0 second play and a 2.5 second gap.
Notice how the tasks change now.
Right, the focus changes.
Yeah.
We see dialogue compact turns at 10.0 seconds of play and 3.0 seconds of gap.
Moving into longer segments.
Yeah, then the lecture formats. Lecture paragraph uses 15.0 seconds of play and 4.0 seconds of gap,
Wow.
while lecture section jumps to 30.0 seconds of play and 5.0 seconds of gap.
And the final one.
The list concludes with Deep Focus Long segment, featuring a massive 45.0 seconds of play and only a 6.0 second gap.
The prominence of the term shadowing immediately identifies a primary user persona here.
Yeah, for you listening, just for context, shadowing is a highly specific technique used primarily in language acquisition.
Very popular among polyglots.
Right. The learner listens to a native speaker and attempts to repeat the audio out loud almost simultaneously.
Mimicking the pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm.
Exactly. It is incredibly demanding. If you try to do it manually, the mechanics of constantly pausing and rewinding the audio completely derail the necessary focus on articulation.
But by automating the rhythm with these specific presets, the extension transforms standard media into a dedicated language lab.
It's genius.
But the most revealing aspect of this list is the mathematical relationship between the play duration and the gap duration as you move down the hierarchy.
I noticed that. The scaling is entirely nonlinear.
Walk us through it.
Okay, so in the shadowing standard preset, you have 5 seconds of audio followed by 2 seconds of silence.
Right.
The gap is 40% of the length of the playtime. It is a massive rest period.
Almost half the time.
But look at the bottom of the list. The Deep Focus Long segment gives you 45 seconds of continuous audio, but only a 6-second gap.
Right.
If the ratio remained constant, a 45-second clip should require an 18-second pause.
Yep. The math doesn't scale linearly.
Instead, the gap becomes comparatively much smaller as the play duration increases.
Yeah.
What drives that mathematical decision?
Well, the nonlinear scaling proves that the developers understand how the nature of cognitive work changes based on the length of the information chunk.
Okay, break that down.
Consider the short burst, the 3 or 5 second clip. This represents a single sentence.
Right.
The prescribed task is shadowing, which requires immediate physical execution.
Physical execution.
Yes, you have to recall the phonetics, coordinate the muscles in your mouth and vocal cords, speak the sentence aloud, and mentally evaluate your own pronunciation against your memory of the original audio.
That is a lot to do in 2 seconds.
Exactly. That intensive physical and evaluative process requires a proportionately massive amount of time relative to the intake.
So the heavy cognitive load of speaking requires the long rest ratio.
Right. But what is happening during a 45-second clip?
Well, 45 seconds is a long time.
Right. 45 seconds of continuous speech delivers multiple paragraphs of complex information.
Short-term memory cannot retain 45 seconds of audio verbatim.
Exactly. Physical repetition is impossible. Therefore, the task during the gap changes entirely.
Oh, I get it. The user is no longer mimicking sounds.
Right. They are engaging in abstract mental summarization. They are synthesizing the core concept of the segment, or perhaps jotting down a brief, high-level note.
And synthesizing the gist of a 45-second block might only require a few seconds of cognitive processing.
Yes. The action shifts from concrete physical repetition to abstract conceptual synthesis, and abstract synthesis requires a comparatively shorter recovery period.
Wow. They mapped the distinct processing speeds of different neurological tasks directly into the default UI.
It is a brilliant piece of UX design.
It really is. But the screenshot provides one more layer of data that we have to talk about.
The custom presets.
Yes. The bottom section, labeled Your Presets, shows where a user has built their own configurations. And there are 3 custom entries here.
Let's hear them.
The first is YouTube Podcast, set to 5.0 seconds play and a 1.7 second gap.
Okay.
The second is TED Talk, my favorite, set to 5.0 seconds play and a 1.9 second gap.
Notice the play duration is the same.
Exactly. The third is Movie Shadowing, set to 5.0 seconds play and a 2.6 second gap.
This is so telling.
Right. All 3 presets utilize the exact same 5.0 second play duration, yet the user created distinct profiles just to alter the gap duration by fractions of a second.
The granularity here is the ultimate proof of concept for the extension.
How so?
The user is adjusting the processing gap by 0.2 of a second, depending on the specific acoustic and structural properties of the content.
Let's analyze why that matters. Why does a movie require a 2.6 second gap, while a YouTube podcast only requires 1.7 seconds?
It comes down to cadence and density.
Cadence.
Yeah. The dialogue in a dramatic movie is often slower, featuring intentional pauses, emotional weight, and complex sentence structures.
Oh, like actors really leaning into their performances.
Exactly. So if a user is shadowing a movie line, they need a slightly longer gap, 2.6 seconds, to replicate the pacing and the nuance of the actor's performance.
And a YouTube podcast is the inverse of that.
Completely. A fast-paced YouTube host is likely speaking rapidly, tightly packing information without dead air. The inherent rhythm of the content is relentless.
So if the user set the gap to 2.6 seconds for a fast podcast,
The pause would feel agonizingly long. It would kill the momentum of the content.
they need a much tighter gap, like the 1.7 seconds, to process the burst of information and immediately catch the next fast-paced sentence.
Yes. The user is utilizing the tool to fine-tune their cognitive environment to match the exact rhythmic signature of the media they are consuming.
They're actively bending the media to conform to their own processing constraints, rather than passively letting the media dictate the pace of learning.
It's incredible.
It really is. I mean, we started this analysis looking at what appeared to be a mundane utility for pausing videos.
Just a glorified spacebar.
Right. But by decoding the interface, the specific numerical inputs, the dual control systems, the acoustic fading, and the nonlinear math of the presets.
We have uncovered a highly sophisticated cognitive pacing engine.
Exactly. It is a tool designed to hack the limitations of human working memory.
It represents a profound shift from passive consumption to highly structured active engagement with digital media.
It certainly does. But as we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with a broader implication to consider.
Oh, this is the big question.
Yeah. We have spent this time examining how a single user can forcefully manipulate a video or a podcast, chopping it into distinct, rhythmically perfect segments to optimize their own learning.
Right.
But if this behavior, this desire for micro-chunked, mathematically paced consumption becomes widespread, how will the ecosystem react?
That's a great point.
If millions of people start using tools like this to force a 2-second gap into every 5 seconds of audio, how long will it be until content creators realize this is how their material is being digested?
Not long at all.
Are we heading toward a future where educational media is no longer designed or edited to be watched continuously? Will we see a new era of content explicitly scripted, paced, and engineered from the ground up to fit perfectly into these rigid 5-second mathematical intervals? Something to think about.